all your podcast channels chimes up just a little bit quicker than all the other social media network. You can always catch us live here on Monday, Mental Health Mondays. Now we have different times and different time zones, so I'd like to try. I'm going to try to keep it this year at 7 o'clock because I think that's a perfect time for us to have Mental Health Mondays and everyone to be getting home right on time. If you have any questions, just you can please inbox me on either the YouTube channel, the podcast channel, the social medias, and I will see it and we'll talk to you. But we're going to introduce um, my co-host here that's going to be doing today. And who knows? Let's keep them, people. Let's keep them Mental Health Mondays. Dr. Ryan C. Warner. Thank you, Ryan, for coming on. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
So, Ryan, if the others don't know, please introduce yourself. Let people know who you are, and then we'll get right into our Mental Health Mondays. Because, as you know, mental health has been talked about, but it has never really been explained. And I think that's funny. We say we need it. We know we need it. You and I both know we teach it, but it's never really been explained what mental health is and how come we need it. So tell people what you do first.
Sure. So I am Dr. Ryan C. Warner. I'm a licensed psychologist, researcher, speaker, and consultant. I'm also the founder and CEO of RC Warner Consulting, LLC, in which we provide leadership, diversity, and wellness enhancement for a broad array of organizations and Fortune 500 companies around the globe. So I'm really honored to be here today to talk more about mental health and mental wellness. We need to keep these conversations going.
In I'm gonna throw like a softball pitch to you. But why do you think? Because if most people you don't know, when you get it on the video, you can see that Ryan is also an African American male. But you guys listening on podcasts, you guys can't tell by our voice, and it's really okay. But let me ask you this: throughout several last 20, 30 years, mental health in the Black community has never been talked about. And we've been trying to address it since the pandemic because it's been stressing us out. You know what I mean? So, why is it coming to the forefront now that you see it's coming? Is it because we're in that much danger, or is it because we just had enough with being too sick and tired?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think that let's look at that multifaceted. I mean, let's
Yeah.
first start with like celebrities and athletes.
Wow.
So there's been
Yeah.
a lot of athletes,
Yeah.
coming out. Simone Biles recently, right? There's been a lot of other athletes as well that say, "Hey, I'm really struggling right now. I'm in this high intense sport, which when I'm engaged in this sport, I have to bring my best all times, right?
All the time.
I have to, yeah, I have to not only entertain other people, but I also have to go out and I have to win, right? And I have to be successful at what I do. And that's a lot of stress. Even though some of us may not identify as athletes, just imagine trying to do something perfect every single day, right?
Every day. Right.
Every day.
Like
Yeah.
driving perfectly. Like, look, Simone Biles, she swerved. What? Look, we caught it on tape. It's not a. It's such an unhealthy atmosphere for those multi people that do it. But yet, so millions of people actually put them in that space. And until the few who recently said, "Hey, I need my own healthy space," and I think that's what they did,
Definitely.
and I love that.
Yeah. So you have individuals that are renowned coming out and saying, "Hey, I need help," but you also have so many different stressors as well going on, right? We have COVID, obviously, which is a significant impact on everybody's well-being, right? But when we look at specifically historically marginalized populations, individuals of color, right now we have police brutality. These things have always happened, but now they're getting on camera, right? And they're getting out there into the media. We There's so many other different stressors that's going on in today's society, and when you put all of those together, ultimately that contributes, to impact on our well-being. Then you look at just the historic, systemic racism, right? And now that's coming a little bit. We're feeling a little bit more comfortable talking about it and identifying, with our history here in America, right? So ultimately, I feel that there's still a definite mental health stigma out there. However, as we talk about it more, as we go on talk shows like this and podcasts like this and get it out there, and as more Black individuals and individuals of color are more vulnerable, then maybe we may feel a little bit more comfortable, talking about our feelings and emotions and how we can be more resilient.
And I've always in all my mental health shows. Now I took a summer sabbatical because I really needed to settle down. I do a lot of shows on a lot of different issues, whether it be mental health, whether it be domestic violence, whether it be the legal applications of what we fall into. They're all hard, emotional, for me personally, shows. And doing over 400 shows in the year, I said, well, you know what? I'm going to take a summer off. And it's not that I stopped working on my civic engagement, my social engagement, all that stuff. It's just that I stopped talking about it, because even though I do my prayers every day, meditation every day, I'm a practicing Buddhist, I know I needed time so I can hear my heartbeat. I can hear my sadness cry. I can hear my emotions explode and then shuffle through them like a puzzle and put them back together and say, you're okay, Paul. It's okay to be this way. Because it's not because you hold this and you carry this, and it's not patting yourself on the back. It's allowing those puzzle pieces to just turn over and mess up the puzzle. Because as you say, every day we're looking so much to be a puzzle piece perfect together so we can move forward, either as an individual, as a male, for me as a Black male, or as a father, or as a husband, or as a friend, or as a brother. We have all these pieces trying to move forward, and it takes an emotional toll. And I tell people, if you have not been checked out by your therapist, you are traumally living your life in traumatic form, because there are things that are holding you and blocking you from living your best life because you have not expressed it, and you've been putting up these constructs to navigate so you can keep on keeping on. We have to stop that language. You just got to keep on keeping on. No, sometimes you just got to stop and say, okay, I need to check myself.
Yeah, so Dr. Dyer, you mentioned something really important, right? You talk about taking that pause. However, oftentimes taking that pause is really challenging, right? So as human beings, we are masters of avoidance, okay? in the short term, we feel that avoidance is helpful. And sometimes maybe it is, right? If I'm going through a hard, maybe day at home, right? I have a 5-month child right now.
Blessings.
So that may, thank you. So that may impact my sleep, right? That may be a little bit challenging for me. But sometimes I have to, just push that aside so I can focus on my task at hand, okay? So in the short term, avoidance may feel be helpful, but in the long term, avoidance is actually maladaptive, to our overall well-being. And that could actually do more harm than good. If we keep pushing down, as you say, just keep going, and not taking that pause, that can have a significant impact. So you mentioned something really important, just taking that breath, taking that pause, reevaluating some things, ultimately being mindful, right? Implementing mindfulness in your life. We need to learn how we can do that more, but also normalize that as well.
This is really, and I know you people want to ask questions later. And if we don't get to it now, inboxes, and I'll send it, and I'll make sure Dr. Warner gets it, and I'll make sure we get it answered. But here's the thing. People are afraid of taking that pause. They're just flat out afraid. And they're so afraid of saying they're so afraid. So there's this huge dynamic to this fear base, right? And as you know, we know this acronym, false evidence appearing real. And that evidence of that fear base, like I can't tell someone I'm afraid, and I cannot acknowledge I'm afraid. How do you think someone could create that awareness that they are creating fear in their own verbiage?
So what you're talking about right now is, emotional intelligence. Okay. If we're more aware of how our thoughts that we have impact our emotions and how our emotions impact our behaviors, the research actually shows that we actually are more happy in life. We find more fulfillment. We have better relationships where we're able to perform better at our job, etc. Right? So sometimes it starts with the thought, and we need to identify how are my thoughts impacting my emotions and behaviors that I have? Because we know that if we're able to expand our thinking, right, it's called cognitive flexibility, be more flexible in our thinking, then we're able to ultimately challenge our thoughts, and come up with different outcomes. So if I give you,
but hold, you're right on, but I tell you, and reading those papers and researches, and I love it myself. I find talking in the Black community and talking to Black men and Black individuals, they don't even think about none of those research papers, and nothing of that affects them. And that's why they're still stuck. They're still emotionally, mentally, and physically stuck. That's where the dilemma comes for me.
Yeah, I mean, we have to expand our vocabulary as well, because oftentimes we say we're sad or we're mad, right? And that's it. But there's more emotions than just sadness or anger. Do we feel disappointed when we're not able to get our way?
Right.
Or if we have a argument with our significant other, do we feel let down? Right? Do we feel not heard? Expanding our vocabulary is one way as well. But as you mentioned, sometimes we're not even aware of this. And that's why, we jump on these type of talks and we engage in this discussion. And that's why there's so many resources out there. And that's why sometimes we're not able to handle things on our own, even though we think we should. That's where professional help, and finding culturally competent providers and reaching out as well to your support system should be helpful.
That's key. And let's roll. And people, when we're talking to Dr. Ryan, he said culturally competent. Those two C words, they are very significant. Culturally and competent, meaning a person understands compassionately what your culture has dictated and how it creates. That's very significant, because if I'm talking, you're in New Mexico, and I can talk to an indigenous person, and if I don't understand their culture in New Mexico and how those tribes down there have actually been marginalized and tried to be anyway, I can talk to on a level of humanity, but not culturally. There's a significant difference.
Yes, and when we think about culturally competent providers, we may feel that there's a lack of them out there.
They are.
I know, yeah. And also when you look at individuals of color who are either master's level or PhD level psychologists or therapists, right? There's a lack of them out there too. So a lot of people, especially people who look like me, especially Black males in general, they may feel, hey, no one understands me. No one I can talk to looks like me, so there's no point, of reaching out and talking to somebody who doesn't understand my experience, right? And that can be hard. That can be hard, And I don't have the answer to see how we can fix that. But just know that there are individuals, out there that even though they may not identify with your specific skin color or your specific experiences, it's important to ask them questions when you do reach out for professional support. So that's something to talk about too.
I think no matter what therapist or what color or what culture, I think the therapist has, because we get into this for a reason of human development and betterment of living life. If I'm unable to help you, I find someone who can. That is just something I think every person who's here to help you will obviously do. I think we know it's a disservice, and we know I have never met a therapist or a person who works with the human mind and neural that says, I may not know what's going on, but I'm here. I'm going to help you no matter what. Well, you would hurt yourself and your client or your patient. But I think I have never met a patient or a clinical therapist that says, I don't know what's going on, but I'll try my best. No, they'll say, I'll find someone in my network that can help you. And I think that's the honest way to do it. And I also think if we just say, I need to be checked out. I started saying that a year ago. Whether you believe you need help or not, get checked out like you would check out your car. Like, bring it in for a tune up. Have a therapist say, you need to see me tomorrow. You need to see me next week. Or have a therapist go, you know what, Ryan, you're good. I like it. I see you working with some things, but you're pretty good. And I can see you in a month or so. And let's check back in and let's do a follow up. But right now, no, you don't have any flares, shooting up in the air. Because some people don't know that there's been shooting flares for the last 50 plus years or however how long they've been living. And if you live in certain neighborhoods and certain environments, there have been flares going off all the time. You just been learning how to keep on keeping on. And we need to stop that.
Yeah, and oftentimes I know when I see patients, each day, oftentimes they don't come to my office until they're in crisis.
Yeah.
Until they're at the lowest point they've ever been, and they say, I can't take it anymore. I need to seek professional help. But as you mentioned, we need to figure out how we can shift those conversations with you're not just coming to the doors when you're in crisis, but you're just like you're going to your primary care provider, if you do annual checkups, right? Are you okay? And if you're not okay, that's okay, right? We have to sometimes be okay with not being okay. And oftentimes we also need to look at our mental health similar to our physical health. Okay, so I often say our mental health must be exercised, just like our physical health. If I go to the gym and I'm trying to get stronger, right? Maybe I feel comfortable with my body, but I just want to continue to improve. Then I need a coach. I need a personal trainer. I need someone to assist me to get to my goals. And that's similar what psychologists and therapists also do as well. Just psychologically.
I actually think I actually put it towards a car. Every time you get your oil change, get your mind changed. Get it checked. Because if you can get a new filter for your car, maybe that should be your warning light going, when's the last time did I see my therapist? That should, make it something so triggerable. Because not everyone thinks about a therapist, but hopefully they think about their car. And if you're really in need help, every time you fill up, which is every 2 weeks, probably depending on your driving, maybe when's the last time you talked to your therapist? That's about as easy as you can do it.
Yeah, and so I do want to acknowledge there are some additional barriers, right, with seeking therapy. And we can spend a whole nother hour on that. However, it's important to know that maybe, for instance, you don't have the financial means, or maybe you don't know where to look, et cetera. It's still important to know that you can reach out, to your loved ones, those that you trust. It's important to have people around you that sometimes maybe you just need to vent to. Maybe you just need to get something off your chest, right? Or maybe you need a second opinion, and maybe a therapist or a psychologist is not accessible at the moment, right? It's important to figure out how we can externalize, right? Get out what's inside, outward. In an adaptive way, instead of getting it out in anger or violence, right? Or in a personal discord with others. So that's also important to mention.
When we talk about creating that awareness so I can make the call or so I can raise my hand for help, what is some of the things that you think that people don't normally normalize in raising their hand and saying, hey, I need to come talk to someone? What are some of those flares, those signs?
Definitely. So I think that's different for everybody. It depends on their circumstances. But if you start to notice that, hey, I've been feeling really down recently, or maybe I don't find pleasure in things that I used to enjoy. And maybe that's starting to impact my relationships. Maybe I'm not as present as I want to be with my children or my spouse. Or maybe I see my work performance, diminishing, right? Or maybe every single time I think about something, it's always thinking about the future
and not about the present
or the past, right? Yeah, and so, and also looking at internally as well. What do I notice about my body? If I'm noticing maybe my heart is starting to beat really fast and I feel kind of anxious and nervous a lot, or maybe I'm always sweating and I'm always tensed up. And maybe that's not, how you are used to feeling, or maybe you feel like that for as long as you can remember, right? And maybe that's just your norm. But others around you are starting to ask, hey, are you okay?
Yeah.
Then those are some signs, right? That hey, maybe I should seek a second opinion just to get a further assessment about myself, so I can not just survive and just manage each and every day, but how can I thrive in my life?
There have been, in the, maybe I'm just a little bit, this new age verbiage that we've been talking about for years, about thriving, surviving, and living. There are three different. There are three significant difference. You want to go over between living, thriving, and surviving.
Yeah, that's great. So I think this is subjective. So this is just my personal
Sure.
opinion.
Yeah.
So I feel that living ultimately, sometimes I look at like just living as just sailing on a boat,
Okay.
right? So you can get on a boat, you can just sail, and you can see some really cool things on the way. But if you don't have a destination, if you don't know where you're going, then that journey is not going to be as fulfilling. Okay, so sometimes we just wake up, we just go through the motions. We go to work,
Yeah.
come home, go to sleep. Go to work, come home, go to sleep. Do the same thing. And maybe we don't find pleasure, fulfillment, and maybe we don't know our purpose. Maybe we don't know our direction in life. I look at that personally just as living.
I agree.
Surviving.
I agree.
You agree? Okay. Okay. And then, so now let's go to your next one. Surviving, in my personal opinion, I feel that surviving is just trying to get by. We all experience different challenges in life, and all our challenges are different, right? And ultimately, sometimes I know with me, if I have a lot of tasks on my plate, I'm just trying to get through it, right? I'm not really spending that much concentration, or I'm not putting my best effort for it, and ultimately that's maybe me just like surviving, trying to get through it. And sometimes we just try to get through each and every day, right? Maybe we wake up having no purpose as well, and sometimes it's really overwhelming. But we just say, hey, we have to get through. We have to push through this.
One of the things before you get to thriving is, like, remember when you were in a young school and you couldn't wait till Friday. That's one of those survivings. You're like, oh my God, it's Tuesday and I can't wait till Friday. Like, Friday was the epic of all days when you're going through the school. Doesn't mean so much when you're in college and living as an adult, but when you're like in junior high school, Friday was it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, and think about just trying to swim, right? Like you just have your head above water. You're just trying to paddle just to get to the other side. So that's the way I look at surviving. But thriving doesn't mean you don't have any challenges,
Right.
but it means you can acknowledge your challenges.
Yeah.
You have the tools to better cope with your challenges, to mitigate the impact of them, right? And you're aware of how your emotions impact, the thoughts that you have and the behaviors that you engage in.
It's
Right?
intentional.
So thrive, yeah, it's intentional. And as I often say, once again, our mental health must be exercised, right? We have to take action. We have to be intentional and deliberate when we take action. And that's ultimately thriving, right? Acknowledging that we have pain, we have maybe previous trauma and challenges that we went through. But if we're able to implement the strategies, if we're able to reach out to other people, if we're able to be mindful, like you said, right? Enjoy the present moment. And if the present moment really it sucks and really is hard,
Then it
if we're able
sucks and
to
it's
think
hard.
about
Right.
then it sucks and hard, but also we can acknowledge some things that are going well. So yes, maybe I'm going through a hard time with my significant other, but I still have beautiful children. I still have a house over my head. I still have a job, right? I still have a career, that provides me income, right? So being able to also expand our thinking and seeing the things that are also going well for us, implementing that gratitude, that's the way that we can thrive.
One of the things I add to thriving, it has nothing to do about mistakes and rewards. It does have everything to do with compassion and love. When you're thriving and you're intentional with your compassion and love, then you have a direction. And all of it has nothing to do with I made a mistake, forgiveness, all that stuff. You can acknowledge all that. I do believe I agree with 100% of what you said. But one of those things with thriving, I say, is compassion, love, and intention. And giving those three things, those other stuff, mistakes, failure, whatever, how you want to put those words around how we've been taught in the Western society is, if you don't get to here, then you did not succeed. Be careful of that word success and succeeding, because that's someone else's perception and it may not be yours. So, and that's a tough thing to come to grips with. Like, am I living other people's words and affirmation, or have I developed my own? Have you had that fascination when people have not understood, they have not developed their own affirmation and they're living others?
Yeah, so right there, you're talking about giving yourself grace.
Mm,
Okay. Oftentimes, we can do 100 things right and one thing wrong, and we'll focus on that one thing we got wrong. And when you say love and compassion, when some of us hear those terms, we think about love and compassion towards others.
right.
But we have to have love and compassion towards ourselves, right? We have to acknowledge, yes, I made a mistake, but that's okay, right? Or yes, this happened, but here are all the other things that I'm good at, right? Implementing those self affirmations, are really important, and sometimes that can be really hard, right? So you just think about sometimes we engage in emotional abuse towards ourselves,
Right.
right? Our internal dialogue, would we like to say that to someone else?
No.
If not, we need to acknowledge that and we need to re-examine how we're speaking to ourselves, right? So
and
those
I
are my
and,
two
and I
cents.
think that takes the time of hearing each other, hearing yourself speak to others as hearing yourself speak to yourself. To hear yourself speak, you must be patient enough to listen to the words that you're feeling, not what you're hearing. You said systemic racism, and as you can see, my little backdrop of the Freedom Fight, the fight continues, and it's got all these. I think in this time of this new emerging new way, because this is the new paradigm coming out of COVID, coming into a new presidency for what there's a lot of new things that we have to say, okay, that didn't work. This isn't working. I have to feel better about my life, what I'm doing, and my purpose. With systemic racism in the Black community and the indigenous community and all the minorities, it's tough to feel proud about the movement forward when you've been struggling for so long. That's a tough thing to get get out of. Do you find that to be true?
Yeah, definitely. And with that, that also may contribute to not trusting the
Yeah,
healthcare system.
right.
You know, if we have experienced, injustice all these years, and we look at the demographics of individuals who are healthcare licensed healthcare professionals, right? And if we identify as a person of color, we may be kind of distrustful of them.
Hmm.
We may not feel that they are going to look out for our best needs. So yeah, and that's hard to overcome, right? So I don't have the answer of how we can fix that, but I feel acknowledging that is the first step.
I'm not sure if I don't think I'm ever with a person to help fix them because I don't think they're broken. I think we are moving through different shifts, through stages, but you're not broken. Broken means like, you're literally shattered in whatever pieces. I don't think you're broken. And when I use the term the puzzle piece of breaking down, we have these pieces that we have merged together through our environment, through the things that we are taught, through some experiences, and just those things will piece together inside us. And if you going back to that acknowledgement, if we have not acknowledgement of how those pieces fit within us, how I was brought up with my mom and my dad, how my environment was brought up in this city, in this inner city, right? Or in this environment or this economic level. You have all these different pieces that we emerge from. And if you break them open and allow them to lay on them and see how economic affected you, how your experiences with this type of school system affected you, or people, or things, and understand how they're merging together and creating what you are speaking and feeling, I'm not sure you can understand who you are.
Yeah, that insight, is really hard, is necessary, but it's really hard to, come by and experience by yourself.
Right.
And that's why emphasizing that, hey, seeking a professional support, can be helpful with improving that insight, improving that awareness. When I meet with patients, just first couple sessions at least, we often go through, how their previous childhood experiences, how their upbringing, how does that all come together to influence, the person that you are now? And sometimes we feel like, oh, well, that was 20 years ago. That doesn't matter, right? But our previous experiences shape who we are. Just think about the house that we live in, right? Or think about a home. The foundation, shapes that home, shapes the stability, the resiliency of that home, right? If we build a home on a foundation that is not really sturdy, a foundation maybe, that experienced a lot of childhood trauma, maybe didn't have a lot of support growing up, etc., then ultimately the finished product is gonna struggle a little bit as well, right? So it's important to acknowledge, that foundation, how you got to where you are now, but also realizing that even though we can't change that, we're not trying to change those past experiences, but we're trying to improve the insight to understand how those experiences shape who we are now. Once we understand that, then we can implement different strategies and tools, to become more resilient and to mitigate stress.
When you're talking to corporations and companies and they're trying to change now a company can change the way it operates different than a person where those experiences shape us. A company can literally change to how they operate and how they treat people and how they understand people. How do you go about you know directing that change? Because a lot of companies I can think off the top of my head don't see that they need to, but when they do feel like they have to change because the dynamic of our social system has been changing, people are being a little bit more vocal about how what you're saying is affecting me, and they're like, oh my God, Dr. Warner, I didn't know we were saying the wrong things. Well, you didn't say it wrong, but you didn't care about how it was affecting them. So how do you really talk to companies that way?
So we can't engage in meaningful change
Right.
unless we assess where we are now.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So similar to trying to create meaningful change in organizations is very similar to creating meaningful change within a psychotherapy room. Right. We have to diagnose, we have to assess, we have to see where we're at right now, what are some gaps, what are some barriers, what are some challenges. Once we assess that, and from an organizational perspective, that may be via interviews or focus groups or quantitative surveys, etc. Once we assess where we are, now we can identify here's some gaps, here's some things that need improving, and here are some ideas that I have to continue to advance your organization. So, for instance, when I do work when it comes to like diversity and inclusivity within the workplace, we know that workplaces who value diversity, who value different perspectives, who are inclusive of all individuals, no matter their ability status, socioeconomic status, etc., they actually perform better. They actually have more income, and actually accomplish the goals at hand better.
Value and recognizing aren't the same. Value diversity and recognizing you need diversity, I don't think are the same. And I've met with companies who thought they said, well, we recognize we need more diversity, but that doesn't mean you value them. Right? You know what I mean? Just because you recognize it, maybe it come from an EO complaint, whatever, doesn't mean you value them. Well, what do you mean, Dr. Paul? I said, listen, value, let me ask you something. How do you speak to your wife? How you speak to your wife, you can either recognize you're married to her or your loved one or your partner, or you value them. There's a different speech to them, or your child. Yeah, you can honor your child, but do you value them? It's the words are different. And a lot of atypical or A-type people who are like, this is what I say, this is how I say it, this is how it should be taken. Well, they don't work out so well. So
yeah, I like that. Yeah.
So
how and with that, if you don't value it, it's not going to be sustainable. So that's important.
So when something, and that's a key point when it comes back to our individual self. When can someone recognize whatever they've been doing forever, how long, isn't sustainable? And that is triggering the acknowledgement, but maybe you haven't valued yourself.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, that's something to think about, and I think it differs based on the person. And outside of just identifying the signs and symptoms, etc., a lot of individuals when I speak with them, They often say they came into my office because someone else said that something's not right with them, whether that be the coworker or the supervisor or their friend, significant other. And sometimes we just seek help because maybe we feel that others push us to do it, but we have to understand that if we're more aware, of the different behaviors are engaging in and how that impacts our relations with other people. Once we're aware of that, then we can take action. So, for instance, if I'm driving, right, and I have no clue about how cars work at all, but I see this light flashing, I'm not knowledgeable about what that light means. So I'm probably just gonna keep driving. And if I keep driving, if a check engine light is on, what's gonna happen to my car? It's gonna break down.
It's gonna
Right?
do something, and I'm like
It's
you. I don't know nothing about a car, and it's gonna do something. It's not gonna be pretty.
Correct. But if I'm able to acknowledge, hey, that blinking red light means I need to check my engine, right? But maybe I don't know anything about cars, but I know how I can go out and reach out to somebody who knows about cars or reach out to a professional. Then they can help identify some additional warning signs I should be aware of so I can be able to mitigate the impact of that issue.
Dr. Ryan, I wish we can rebuild some humans with warning lights.
Yeah.
I really do. But I don't think that's. I know that new age world with with AIs or with it's coming, but they're not human. But our warning lights, we've always had it. We're actually born with it. It's the inner voice. It's the inner. It's there's a lot of words you can call it, but we have ignored it because of the constructs and the things we built up around us. And in the Black community, I literally tell people, if you don't see a therapist, you're working off a sickness. And I flat out just directly said, if you have not seen a therapist, you're working off of sickness and trauma. They're like, really? I'm like, trust me. And they're like, how do you, but you don't know me. Trust me. Here's how I know this. The community in a whole has been traumatized. And if you are unscathed by the community being traumatized, that also says you're traumatized because you, you're not without reason or cause. You may say it doesn't affect you, but that doesn't mean it's not affecting you. So go see someone so they can say, no, I can see how you're handling it, but how do you feel about you handling it? Now those things will open up. So that's how I really feel about it. That's how I think.
And what you're talking about is being proactive
Yeah.
instead of reactive.
Yeah.
And we have to learn how we can do that more.
What are some of the clues and tips? Because people who listen, and I'm glad they'll listen, I'm glad they'll hear, I'm glad they share. But I know I'm tired of people looking at small phrases that it was going to help them get through the next month or year or week. Instead of that, where can they just go to get the help? Like, even where can they contact you? Like, how do they get a hold of you? Because it's not about, I'm not trying to give you help with tips anymore. I used to go through that during when COVID. A lot of people were struggling, as you know, everything went up between violence, alcoholism, blah. It just went up, up, and up, and up, and up. And help with tips not to commit suicide. I don't want to give tips anymore. I think we should stop giving tips. You just need to come in. You need to go see someone. You need to go get checked. You need to get your check engine light checked out. So how can people get a hold of you to get their engine checked out? Because we know we're doing a lot of things virtually. So it's not like just because I don't live in New Mexico, I can't hear from you.
Yeah, so definitely. So it's important to know that I can always point people in the right direction.
Right.
I may not be able to help everyone, but I can point them in the right direction. So, for instance, we should be aware of the resources out there. Number one, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, NAMI, is a huge resource out there, and I believe they provide a couple free sessions as well to individuals. There's a lot of different knowledge on the website, and a point of contact that you can reach out to as well. Psychology Today is another one. If you're trying to look for a culturally competent therapist in your area that you live, they have a huge database of individuals all across the U.S. and I believe the world as well, about providers. And there's just phenomenal other resources out there when it comes to, just mental awareness. But it's important that we have to first be aware that it's okay to seek help, right? And that's the
Yeah,
first barrier, right?
right.
I can throw 1,000 resources
Yeah.
at you, but if you're not
Okay.
okay with being vulnerable,
Yeah.
and okay with taking this first step, and you have to know that seeking help doesn't make you weak. It actually makes you stronger because you're able to acknowledge, hey, I may be challenging, or hey, I may be experiencing some challenge right now, or hey, maybe I want to just get ahead of the curve and be proactive. Maybe I need to seek some additional support. And once again, similar to going to the gym and asking for somebody to spot you, no one feels like that person that's getting that spot is a person who's weak, right? But we need that psychological spot sometimes. We need that support. So it's important to know that number one, we have to be aware of the barriers, and once we overcome the barriers, then we can reach out to support, so we can get that help we need.
From this, obviously, it's a perspective question. Do you think the Black community will ever be successful if they don't start embracing mental health?
Yeah, so it's my personal opinion that, I mean, success is a subjective, I guess, term, how you measure success. But I do feel that mental health is embedded in everything we do. So whether you look at success as financial success, or whether you look at success as being a good father, a good mother, a good family member, a good brother, sister, etc., however you view success, mental health is embedded in that somehow. So if we are not careful about managing our mental health, but not only managing, trying to figure out how we can thrive with our mental wellness, then yeah, it's going to be hard to be successful in any aspect of your life. So that's definitely a huge factor in everything we do.
I actually think it's the number one factor because I'm a neuroscience guy. I'm a health. I just think it's the number one factor of understanding how your mind brain is working, how it's connected to the whole of who you are, and how it's creating the everything starts from the top on the way down, and it's how we connect and it's how we disconnect, and as a survivor of PTSD from the military and constantly always working on thriving to live every day. Every day, I thrive to live every day. Because if I don't work on that living life process, it would be so easy for me to take my own life. And I know that. And that's why I work so hard on working hard and practicing. It's not a perfection, it's the practicing of living because that's important to me. I've seen death, I've been around death. I almost took my own life at one time. So living is so important. And I always tell people, I teach the living sciences because I want you to learn how to live, then thrive, like you said, because right now you're either surviving or you're the walking dead. And that's not healthy for you, for me, and as a community of people developing the human life connection, whether you're black, white, or whatever. I think it's that human existence. We have a hard time understanding our own personal existence. So that's why I can defame or minimize your existence because I don't cherish my own.
And I appreciate you sharing that story, and when you talk about your experiences, there may be someone listening right now that may feel that they can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. So for you to say, hey, I experienced these hardships, these challenges, but I was able to push through, and find that light a little bit. And I think that's important to know because sometimes when we only see our perspective, we feel that we can't get out of that. And we feel that, maybe taking our own life or suicidal thoughts, et cetera, are the only way to end that pain. So it's important to know that we can overcome these challenges with the right support and with being open to be vulnerable.
So now, most of you people don't know this. Prior to we getting on there, Dr. Ryan and I were talking. He said he was from Chicago. Now, as most of you people know who listen to me, I'm a New Yorker, grew up in the Bronx, and I grew up, and I'm a Knicks fan. So I got to ask him, is he a Bulls fan? Are you a Bulls fan?
Definitely, yes.
Oh.
Bulls, Bears, Sox.
So you're a Sox fan, not a Cubs fan. So you're a South Side Chicagoan.
Yeah, so I was born on the South Side, then I went to school, high school in the South suburbs. I have family and friends all over the city of Chicago. My wife is from West Side Chicago, so yeah, everything Chicago. Yeah, we love from the South Side to the suburbs to the West Side. So
That's all right. You know, growing up as a Knicks fan, as a Knicks suffering, traumatized Knicks fan, I know how to push through. But congratulations on your teams and all the things you do. And I always talk to a lot of men who are sports fan. I say, as much as you're agonizing over your own sports team, who is agonizing over your own self team? And that's something I can put in perspective to people who are sports like minded, you know what I mean? And they never think of it that way. I'm like, yeah. So you're your own CEO of your own team, and have you won a championship? Are you winning your season? And because if your team was losing your season, you would get rid of your quarterback too. And you're the quarterback, the coach, and the owner. So how are you doing in your season? And they're like, wow, Dr. P, I never thought of it that way.
Yeah, and to win your season, you need a team around you. You need people that you can trust. You need meaningful connections with others.
Yeah.
So that's a huge part of mental wellness too.
Before we take off, I just want to say thank you so much, Dr. Warner, and I would love to have you more back on for Mental Health Mondays. And then we'll get into more about solutions and about how to help people on specific ideas of, like, if they're going through this, these are some of the things you can do. These are some practices, and these are some solutions, not tips. I think solutions are different than tips. I think there's tips in cooking. The solution is mental health. So I just think we can bridge that gap just a little bit.
Yes, definitely. I'd be happy to come on in the future. And I really appreciate this opportunity. This is really fun for me.
How can people get a hold of you besides emailing you, or just so they go to RC Warner LLC or RC Warner Consulting LLC? What do they do?
So, yeah, so number one, the easiest way to find me, you can just Google my name, Dr. Ryan C. Warner. You can also visit my company website at rcwarnerconsulting.com. You can also send me an email at rcwarnerconsulting@gmail.com as well to get in touch. And I'm on all social media platforms at Dr. Ryan C. Warner.
All right. Blessings, people. We know there's a lot of emotional changes going on out there. As you can see, the Freedom Ride, the fight continues. There is fight for voting, equality. Again, we've been going over this for the last 58, 200 plus years, and we're saying the same thing. And it's really, it may not be okay to say the same thing, but you got to feel yourself struggling with the pain that you're going through anyway. But we got to keep moving forward, but move forward mentally, happily, healthy, and reach out to a person. Reach out to me. I'll direct you to the Dr. Ryans of the world. I can direct you to the Dr. Lewis's of the world. There's some amazing cultural, competent providers out there that is really waiting for you to say, I need help, because we are not soothsayers. We don't look in the crystal balls and saying, I'm going to, dramatically dial this number because I know they need help. That doesn't work that way, does it, Dr.
Yeah,
Ryan?
not at all. Nope.
Because if you don't come through the door, we won't know who you are.
Yep, definitely.
Much love, appreciate it. You guys take off. Remember, you can listen to Apple Heart, iTunes, all your podcast station, all the Facebook channel, all the social media. Have any questions, comment, please contact me, Dr. Paul W. Dyer at gmail.com. And I love you, and I wish you all to be healthy, happy, and safe. And please get tested and get vaccinated and so we can live in a better, healthy, socially acceptable, equality life. Thank you so much.